Well, I think with the Inspired by Muhammad, it's to remind people that when Muslims are out there doing good, average Muslims are out there working in homeless charities, helping the elderly, albeit smiling at you when they cross the road, they're all doing it because that's the model that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught us. And that's what the objective is to model that good behavior in our everyday lives. But as you said, I mean, there is obviously a need for a kind of broader campaign. And we say the Inspired by Muhammad campaign is just one element. We hope that, you know, Muslims will take it upon themselves to go out there and to reflect that good behavior, and to remember that the Prophet ﷺ in his life had to deal with far worse persecution than we are going through today, and in fact did not react in anything of semblance to what we see on our television screens. I mean, you gave the example of the Danish cartoons. I mean, unfortunately we can think of a whole array of other examples in which Muslims are behaving badly, and like behaving in a way well, I think unfortunately in many protests, for example, one that springs to mind is the protest against the returning soldiers from Afghanistan. And the sort of slogans that we're seeing there, you know, we lose the basic humanity to recognize that this is still a mother and a father losing a son. You know, take away the politics and this is still a human soul that's passed. And I think it's very, you know, unfortunate that we are politicizing every single aspect, perhaps as a reaction, as we were saying, to what's going on in the public sphere. And we need to really bring it back to the fundamentals of the faith and try and make sure that we reflect those.
That's very true, but what would you say to someone telling you, you know, all what we are saying about the Prophet, peace be upon him, is always, you know, show solidarity, show love, and that's all true. This is the way he was. But he was also someone, when your rights are not respected, he was to stand up and say, I'm not going to let you do that because this is against the human dignity. And he was ready to struggle for his rights or the rights of the community. And very often when we speak about this as Muslims, we are very much, it's two extremes. On the one side is everything is politicized, everything is about fighting. On the other side is all about solidarity and love, and during Ramadan we come with the, you know, showing to the people that we are ready. But in between it might be in fact that the right way to follow in the footsteps of the messenger is to have this balanced approach. Do you think that we are doing this now? It's really just also strive for your rights. Don't let the people show disrespect towards you, because this is at the end of the day against your dignity, but also against their own dignity.
I do, and I think that one of the issues that we have is that we've not quite latched onto the universal principles, and we keep advocating the specificity of Islam. So, you know, when we see, for example, Christians being banned from wearing a cross in their workplace, Muslim voices tend to be rather mute. But when it comes to somebody not being allowed to wear their headscarf when they're serving in a restaurant in Disneyland, for example, then we hear the voices of the Muslims, you know, raucous. And this is a problem because, you know, we've got to figure out what it is that we're standing up for. If we're standing up for people's right to manifest their religious identity, for that to be an acceptable facet of public life, then we need to manifest it for everybody. And I think that that's a double standard that is still plaguing us, unfortunately.
So we also have to be self-critical with the Muslims, because they are not. In fact, we can also get a sense that the people around us in the West might have a bad perception, because the Muslims are not delivering. It's that they are not doing the job. They are not enough involved in changing this perception.
Yeah.
So we spoke about solidarity, we spoke about education, we spoke about also not to be silent when other or people of other faiths are themselves targeted or discriminated. Is there something else that you think that should be done, and in which way we can move? Because what is the reality today is in the West, and especially in Europe, is the populist parties are just now gaining ground, and we can see this everywhere, from the Netherlands to even here in Britain or in France or in Switzerland or in Germany. It's quite worrying, and once again there is something to be done here. In which way you think that we can change this perception and really, because for me, for example, when I have to speak about Islam, I say the best example, the best introduction to Islam is the Prophet's life, peace be upon him. This is it. This is where we have to go. So how can we change the perceptions about Islam by coming back to a better understanding of this life? What could be done more, and in which way it should be done?
Well, I could think of a number of ways, but I think the most obvious, if we're going to model it, you know, on a very specific example of the Prophet's life, would be to say that, you know, he really worked at the grassroots. I mean, it sounds almost like a a catchphrase to say that now, but he did. He worked at the grassroots. He worked with people on the ground, and he didn't sort of only mingle with the sort of higher stratas, the intellectuals, as it were, the ivory towers. And a lot of the issues that we see with the rise of the sort of far right across Europe are to do with certain sections of European society feeling neglected. They feel neglected politically, and they feel neglected socially. They feel that people are not paying attention to their rights, and that certain minorities within society are adamant about having their rights respected but completely ignore the rights of others. Now, we might say that to some extent that might be true when Muslims are very concerned about their own rights but somewhat neglectful of the fact that there are working class white families in the UK who are struggling, who are having a really tough time. That's double standards when we don't stand up for those rights as much as we stand up for our own. And I think you were saying, you know, a way in which we can improve this situation is through outreach to these people. You know, the Prophet ﷺ never hesitated to approach his enemies and to show them kindness and to show them mercy and to show them compassion. And one of the ways in which, in fact, some of his enemies came round was the compassion that he showed them. And I think that that's a very, very powerful thing that one can do. We have an aging society throughout Europe. We have a society in which many elderly people are left. People die throughout the winter. It's such a simple thing to do. Open your door to the elderly, show them that these new faces that are changing the nature of their society are not negative ones. They're here to bring something positive.
Thank you so much for that. I think that during this discussion we have been able just to at least to touch some of the elements that are so important now. The first is really the bad perception of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Islam per se. It's coming from many reasons. Two of them are, of course, ignorance, which is widespread among the people, but also Orientalism and ideology, the way it's presented with a specific agenda by some intellectuals and scholars. And this is what the Muslims should be involved in all this discussion, spreading more knowledge around and behaving the right way, as we were saying, is something which is quite important, not only when it comes to speak about Islam, when it comes to speak about rights, when it comes to speak about discrimination for Muslims and non-Muslims. This is the way the Prophet himself was behaving within his community and with the other people. So reaching out, being vocal, being present in the society, and at the same time also not to be naive with anything which has to do with ideology and Orientalism, because this is also another struggle which is important in the field of knowledge today. Well, that's all we have time for. Please let us know your thoughts and views on any of the shows you have seen, and here is the way to contact us.
We'd like to hear your views on today's show, as well as ideas for future programmes. You can do this by emailing us at islamandlife@presstv.co.uk. You can also join our Facebook page by searching Islam and Life on Press TV, where you can view past programmes, keep up to date on future shows, leave comments and meet other Islam and Life fans.
Finally, I would like to thank my guest, Myriam Francois-Serrat. Thank you for your insight. We'll have a second program on this topic from an Islamic perspective and a Muslim majority countries, and I hope to see you next week, inshallah.